Good afternoon and welcome to the PENC webinar series. My name is Katie Cox. I'm the PENC Membership Director. I will serve as moderator today and assist with any technical issues that arise. Just use the chat box and I will assist you. We will take questions at the end of the webinar today. Please use the questions box to type those in and I will read each question out loud. Today's presenter is Erin Futrell. Erin began her planning career in Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina, shortly before graduating with a master's degree in environmental studies, coastal management from the University of North Carolina, Wilmington. She spent 5 years as the Planner 1 responsible for planning, zoning, CAMA, and floodplain development review and permitting. She then accepted a position with the City of Wilmington as the Associate Planner in zoning, where she continued working in zoning, planning, and floodplain administration for the next 5 years. In April of 2019, Erin was hired as the new NFIP Eastern Branch Planner with NC Emergency Management Risk Management. Erin, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you guys for having me. It's always strange presenting on this platform because I don't get to see my class members. But hello everybody, and thank you for joining us today. I'm going to talk about performing substantial damage assessments after an event happens. And here in Eastern North Carolina, we're going to deal a lot with hurricanes. And as we just found out from our last event, tornadoes and fires. So let's get started. I do want to say that some of the material is dry, so I tried to supplement with some pictures from our last assessments, and I'll do my best to make it a little bit more exciting. So just to start off, these events are surprising people more and more. They're coming more frequently, and I think that we all should just remember to be as prepared as we possibly can and don't underestimate Mother Nature. So this picture is of a home that was elevated before Florence hit, and it was elevated several feet above the BFE of the maps. And as you can see here, there's a garage or storage shed that is floating. So I would assume that this house is elevated 8 or 9 feet in the air, and I could be off a little bit, but they were smart to elevate higher than the BFE just to be prepared, and potentially because they knew what their environment packed and how high historic floodwaters were. So that's my plug for the day. So what is substantial damage? Well, it is damage of any origin sustained by the structure, whereby the cost of restoring the structure to its pre-damage condition would equal or exceed 50% of the market value of the structure before the damage occurred. And restoring the structure to its pre-damage condition, is important. Any origin refers to natural or man-made hazards. They say damage is damage, so we would consider all damages in this assessment. And most times the primary cause of our damage here in Eastern North Carolina is flooding or flooding and high winds. The SDE inspectors need to evaluate the impact of all damages. That would be including fire, tornado, even lack of maintenance, fallen trees, and even damages that occurred prior to the most recent event. So if you had an event in January that caused damage, and then we're inspecting this structure in September, it's within that 1 year look back period. So we're going to consider damage from that event as well that happened in January. There is an SDE equation or an SD equation. The cost of repairs is going to be divided by the pre-damage market value. And if that is equal to or greater than 50% of that market value, it is considered substantially damaged and would need to be brought into compliance with today's flood damage prevention ordinances, base flood elevations, things of that nature. So the cost of repairs are based on the percent damage of individual elements within a structure. We're going to cover those individual elements later on, so I'll leave that go for now. And then pre-damage market value refers to the value of the structure the day before the damage occurred. And when we talk about structure value, this does not include the value of the land, the contents, personal belongings, or detached structures. This is just the structure in question. So when the rain stops, we are going to jump to action, and we are going to start contacting our communities. At least this is the state. The state is going to start contacting our communities, and we're going to see who needs assistance with these damage assessments. Some of these communities don't have the resources or the staff to conduct a multi-day inspection through their special flood hazard areas, because they're going to have a ton of other things going on. So what kind of data do we need? We definitely need a list of structures that are located in the special flood hazard area, and the ones that are going to need to be inspected during our damage assessments. Now, the local community most likely will have done a windshield tour of the area just to see which structures were inundated, had damage, and probably require a further inspection or closer inspection. So we'll get that list of structures. We will have the priority areas identified, and we will have address data and maps made from our tax records. So GIS and tax record data is super helpful and very important when putting together all of this data. So we'll have, our staff will have close contact with the tax personnel of that community, whether it's the county or local government. So we will also need to obtain base or unit cost for the single family homes, mobile homes, and non-residential structures. This is typically going to be kind of like a replacement cost. So it's going to be, hey, we're going to say that the general cost for the area is about $120 per square foot to build back in today's standards. Also, market value of the structures, adjusted tax value or appraisal data will be needed. Due to the availability of the tax value, we use that right out of the gate. And then we can come back and try to get some market values or appraisal data from property owners. We also will need the date of damage and the length of the event. It is very important to consider the duration that the floodwaters were in each of these structures, because it will make a difference as far as saturation and wicking and all those interesting things. So cost of repairs, there are 3 options that the NFIP allows. The one that I have used for our last 2 assessments is the computed damages from the SDE tool. The tool was developed to do this. It incorporates all of the necessary factors to determine appropriate percentage damage. So this is what we use. You can also get a qualified contractor's cost estimate. And generally, when those come available is after the community has performed damage assessment and provided the homeowners with either a letter stating they are considered substantially damaged or not. And so then the property owner can kind of appeal that determination by presenting a qualified contractor's cost estimate or an appraisal of their structure. Also, a cost estimate can be prepared by a community official. If they have a community official on staff that is qualified to prepare this cost estimate, it can be done in-house by the local governments. So things to remember when accepting contractor or community official cost estimates. Local communities need to make sure that all repairs necessary to return the structure to the pre-damage condition are considered. And then that includes donated materials and volunteer labor. Those need to be calculated at prevailing market values, just so it is an apples to apples approach for each structure. When a community or the state is looking into a prepared damage assessment or cost assessment for the repairs to the structure, we are going to need to look at all structural elements. And those elements are going to include foundation, footings and pilings, monolithic or other types of concrete slabs, bearing walls, tie beams and trusses, wood or reinforced concrete decking or roofing, floors and ceilings, attached decks and porches. That's important. They must be attached to that structure. Interior partition walls, exterior wall finishes, windows, doors, shingles, and then hardware for all interior finish elements, utility and service equipment, and the labor to repair those things. In addition, it will be all interior finish elements. So that's going to be your flooring, tile, hardwood, carpet, and this is going to be the stuff that's immediately above the subflooring. Bathroom tile and fixtures, wall finishes, kitchen, utility and bathroom cabinets, built-in bookcases, cabinets, and furniture and hardware. Also, utility and service equipment, heating and cooling, repair of construction of plumbing and electrical services, all of your light fixtures and ceiling fans and security systems. And then appliances are going to be the built-in kitchen appliances, so stoves, oven, and dishwashers. Even things like central vacuum systems, water filtration, conditioning, or recirculating systems, and electrical panel boxes. Some of these things are going to be hard to determine whether they're existing or not. So this is why when those contractors are preparing these estimates, we list out these requirements in their estimates. Things that we do not want in those assessments are clearly listed out here as well. So we don't want to include the cleanup and trash removal. You'll see in a couple pictures later on that there is a ton of debris outside, appliances, countertops, and we don't want that included in these assessments. Cost to temporarily stabilize a building will not be included. Any plans or specifications needed to rebuild, land survey costs, permit fees and inspection fees, they will not be included. But a lot of times the local communities will waive these fees anyway, so that's kind of a good thing to note. Carpeting and recarpeting installed over finished flooring. So if there's a wood floor over the subfloor and then they're going to put carpet over the top of that, they're not going to include that second level of layer flooring. Any outside improvements and cost required to repair existing violations that are health, safety, and sanitary codes. This would be an existing, identified, and required repair. So if they've already received a letter stating that their sanitary codes don't meet, or sanitary situation doesn't meet the code, that's not going to be included in this assessment. And then any plug-in appliances, you're going to look at refrigerators and like microwaves, things like that. So the inspections themselves, this is where you guys are going to come in if you decided to volunteer. We want two-person inspection teams. It's strongly recommended, but it's recommended for good reason. So it helps with safety issues, the completeness of the inspection data. One person might get involved in something and forget to fill something out or take a picture. So two people on the inspection team is really helpful for the quality of inspection data, and then also the speed of inspections. Sometimes you're going to have distractions. You're going to have neighbors walking over asking what you're doing, and then their property owner might be there and wanting to talk and discuss about cleanup and what the next steps are. And actually what that substantial damage determination means for them. So it's good to have one person take lead on that conversation and let the other person do the inspections themselves. It's super important that the inspections will be completed as is. We do not want any inspectors to go in and start removing drywall or carpeting, or pulling up flooring to get a better look at the subfloor. We don't want you climbing ladders or getting into attics or going under the homes. We're going to take a walk around the house, look in some windows. If the property owner allows you to go inside the house and it's safe, you can go inside the house and take a better look. But for the most part of what I've seen, there's not been a lot of property owners allowed back in to these damaged areas until after a couple weeks for getting electricity back on and things like that. There are 3 parts to the inspections that require judgment. Makes you use your brain to put together and formulate some ideas as what the quality of construction is, what the original quality of construction. Was this a low-end home? Was it a budget home? Was it average neighborhood? Or is this a high-end neighborhood with high-quality fixtures and construction? For the most part, we are going to say, let's use the average quality of construction unless it is clearly a lower end home or a very high-end home. And this is for the same for the pre-damage depreciation value. We're going to say, let's use average condition for the majority of them, but if it has clearly had some deferred maintenance and is clearly very poor condition, then we would say, okay, go ahead and click that one for us, or check that on the worksheet. And on the other end of the spectrum, if it is a brand new home and it's in excellent condition, then we would go ahead and use that it is, mark that on the worksheet. And here's the one that I think takes most consideration, is the building element percent damaged. This takes a little bit of thinking and figuring out, is it a 2-story home? Is 50% of the floors damaged, or is it a 1-story home where 100% of the floors may be damaged? And then just a quick note, we do ask that these increments be in 5s or 10 increments just for the ease of computing. So we do want to have some sort of a layer of ethics when we walk out into the field. We don't want to get in the way of any of the recovery efforts from emergency management, or maybe the fire department, or even the local government. And we also want to be very respectful and careful when we are doing these inspections. Always ask permissions before you enter into a house. Knock on the door if you suspect somebody's home before you go walking around the house. And then obviously don't enter a structure if they are unsafe or potentially have unsafe conditions. So now we'll talk about assessment types. There are 2 types of assessments. Used to be 3, but they've kind of consolidated. So we have residential type of assessment, and this is for single family homes, town homes, or row homes. And then we have the non-residential assessment for everything else, which also includes apartment buildings. So this is an example of the worksheet that we have taken out into the field. This is the residential worksheet. I'm just going to quickly go over the components. A couple of things that we really want to capture is we're going to probably be divided up into teams. So we're going to want your team name or number. We're going to want the date. And this is a situation where, if we're running through these, we know the date, but we need to know the team name. We need to know the street address, and make sure you put east or west, north or south, and just kind of clarify where that's at. And then we want to know the structure attributes. One of those is this a single family home? Is it a townhome, or is it a manufactured home? These all make a difference in the calculations of the percent damage under the element percentages. Is it 1 story or 2 story? And like I was explaining a little earlier, it makes a big difference in the percent damage of the elements if it's a 1 story versus a 2 story or 3 story. Foundation types, and then we look at what type of superstructure do we have. Is it wood framed? Is it masonry? Roof coverings, exterior finishes, HVAC system. What type? Does it have a heating and cooling system? Is it central air, HVAC? And then, like I was talking about, quality. Is this a average construction, or is it either, you know, something that is on the farther edges? Depreciation rating up here in the right-hand corner is also going to be generally average condition unless we can really prove that it's poor or excellent. And then year of construction is easily available through the tax records. That's something that we're probably going to populate afterwards. But we do know the date of damage, and we know the cause of damage. And then we will also need to notate on the sheet here, duration of flood, if it days, hours, the depth of flood above the ground, and then the depth of flood above the first floor. These are super important. And then here we get to the element percentages, and this is where you're going to put your 5%, 10%, 11%. They do also include a diagram to add your measurements so we can have a square footage of the structure. A lot of times we will have that data already from the tax records, so there won't be a need to do that, but there may be times where we will ask to get some measurements. So far, we've been able to get that information from tax records, and we populate that afterwards. But if we go out into the field, we are going to set these parameters beforehand, before the damage assessment starts. Here is a non-residential worksheet. It is a little bit different than the residential. They're going to ask for different things. You're going to ask, they add 5 or more stories, 2 through 4 stories. So that's a little bit different. And then they add the structure use. And when you go into the deep training into the SDE process, they will clarify how important the use is and how it calculates percent damages based on the use of that structure. So we want to get those as close as possible. You may not see the exact use in here, but put it as close to one of those as possible. Sprinkler systems or an elevator or escalator, you might be able to see whether that is included in the structure or not. You may not, so that's something that we can always go back and get information on. And then about the same quality, date, type of damage, hours of inundation. And then over here under element percentages, there is a little bit less to calculate at first glance, but they've lumped a whole bunch of different categories that we had to look at in residential into the interiors over here. So that's why that's different. And we'll go into that deeper later on. So sometimes we will come across businesses that are located in residential structures. So the inspection form should be based on the design and construction materials and initial use of the structure. So one of those worksheets that I just went through, you need to figure out what the exterior, not what the initial use was, not the exterior appearance or the current structure use. And then if you're in doubt, consider whether someone could actually live long-term in a structure that you're looking at. If a business is located in a manufactured home or a structure was originally built as a single-family residence, we need to use the residential inspection form just because that structure is going to be more residential in nature. For examples, I have here on the left, there is this manufactured structure, and no matter the use on this one, even though it looks like it's non-residential, it could be storage, it could be some commercial entity, you're going to use the residential inspection form for this one. This structure here in the middle, it looks like it could be residential in nature, but it looks like it's more of a commercial construction type, and it's probably part of, or appears to be part of, an apartment complex, in which case you would use the non-residential form. And then the structure on the right clearly was built for a business, and really is not a residential structure as its intended use, so it would be also the non-residential form for this one. So the entire rest of the section is going to kind of be about estimating percent damages. So we'll move into that. Things to note is elevation of the lowest floor. A lot of times it's going to be at that first door threshold. This is not going to be notated on your worksheet that you'll have out in the field. However, it will be something that we'll look at when we're doing our assessments to see where the floodwaters lie. And we may be able to pull this information from other data sources or from elevation certificates located in the local office. So we may have this information. Depth of flood above the ground, this is super important. You'll always want to notate that on your worksheet. And in order to do that, you'll look for high water mark or a dirt mark on a structure or debris line on adjacent trees and fences, shrubs. A lot of times the house looks clear and then you walk into like an outdoor shower or kind of around the structure, and you'll see those rack lines or watermarks. So you'll be able to get an idea of how high that water is. This structure was assessed in 2019, and this was from Hurricane Dorian on Ocracoke Island. We walked up to this structure. You could clearly see where that water line was and how much water had been in that structure. So this was a pretty well inundated home. But this is something you would look for on windows, doors, and siding. You can also see them on shrubs, and this is a clear indication of where that flood level is, so you can kind of transfer that height over to a structure that you're looking at. And then we definitely want to notate the depth of flood above the first floor. Again, you're going to look for the high water mark to identify this, and then you'll look for where that first finished floor is located, generally at your threshold, the door threshold. So here's a kind of a good indication. You can see your watermark goes all the way around here. Another structure that got flooded really well. And then here's your first finished floor. You open up your door and it's just right at the door's threshold. When we are either driving in our cars, going to the next structure, or we're walking down the neighborhood because they were all flooded, you may have homes that look like this. Don't let that fool you. It may not look like it's been damaged, but then you walk inside and it may look a little something like this, and the homeowners have already been ripping out everything. So just be aware that taking a closer look is going to be required when you're doing these assessments. So for some resources, what is the baseline for estimating damage to each of these elements? There are, thankfully, good resources that you will probably have in the field with you, and gives you a good idea of what a baseline for percent damage is on each of these things. And this is a picture of one of the structures that we took a look at on Oak Island this past week. This is the back of the house, and the front of the house, you could kind of see a little bit of tarp coming over the ridge line of the house. And so we walked around to the back of the house, and you could see that there was a lot of damage to the roof that wasn't necessarily apparent from the front. This here is a percent damage table. This is a little bit different from the next resource that I'm going to show you, but it gives you a good idea of what kind of percent damage for each element may be present with the different amount of feet over here on the left-hand side. And these are going to be based on a one-story slab-on-grade home. This is the field guidance for estimating percent damage for residential structures. This is what we take out in the field. It's probably 12 pages. And this is just an example of the foundation. It gives you kind of a description, and then it gives you percent damage based on the level of flooding. And this is just kind of a closer up of what it's talking about. A 0 to 25% damage is going to be if water does not rise to the level of the bottom of the first floor. There would be no scouring at the footings, and there may be some undermining of the concrete slab, but really no visible cracks that are new. 25 to 50% damage would be if the water rises just above the first level of the first floor, and there's going to be some limited scouring at the footings or the pilings, and the soils are going to be saturated, and you're going to see some undermining of the concrete slab and maybe some cracks. 50 to 75% damage would be 4 to 7 feet outside of the building. Again, some scouring, and then cracks are going to be notable on foundation walls potentially, and the undermining of the slab. 75 to 100% damage could be anywhere from 7 feet or more above the first floor or outside of the building. Scouring, foundation is cracking or displaced. The structure has been knocked off its foundation, and then portions of the foundation are damaged or missing. Undermining of the slab, major cracking and separation of the slab. So this is pretty specific. There's a little bit more information on the previous page, but I just wanted to give you an idea of what kind of assistance we have out in the field to help us make these determinations, so we can try to be consistent is the key. So now we'll go into residential assessments, and here is a structure from Oak Island. And I would say that that has been undermined, or the foundation has been undermined. Those pilings are just support beams that have been placed, and it actually sat without those wooden supports for about a week before they got placed on there. So it was just like this hanging floor. Insane. And there was people sleeping in this structure when the foundation got removed. So residential structural elements, we kind of went over this earlier. You are going to look at the foundation, the superstructure, roof covering, exterior finish, interior finish, doors and windows, cabinets and countertops, plumbing, electrical, appliances, and HVAC. And then we'll go into what each of those elements include. So foundation types, we're going to have a couple different types. There's going to be a slab on grade we can look at, and then continuous wall with a slab up here. We'll have a crawl space that we'll be looking into, and a pile foundation or piers and posts. Technically, I have this crossed out because for the NFIP and the special flood hazard insurance purposes, basements should be prohibited, which should eliminate some damage. So we will also look at the superstructure, and this will include the wall support systems that extend from the foundation wall to the roof structure. It could be exterior wall sheathing panels, shear panels, braced wall panels, and structure members that support the roof, so the rafters and the trusses, but this does not include roof sheathing. That would be included in the roofing. So if you have a wood frame construction, it's going to be lightweight lumber or metal studs, interior walls without sheathing, or the typical exterior structural panel wall sheathing is plywood or hardboard. It's typically what you'll see. Masonry construction, you're going to have load-bearing walls using unreinforced masonry and reinforced blocker brick. Typical exterior covers of the masonry are going to be stucco, siding, and masonry veneer. And then you may see some reinforced concrete construction, and this should be categorized under masonry in the superstructure. Roofing is going to include lightweight composite shingles, roof tiles, metal roofs, and we were told that this should include standing seam only. All other just regular metal roofs would be lumped under shingles just because of their cost value, I believe. And then built up roofs with gravel or rock cover, and then it will also include the roof sheathing and flashing. Something important to note is roofing does not include the structure frame members, such as the rafters or prefabricated trusses. So here's another picture of a structure from Oak Island. It looked like the overall shingles held up, but we believe the uplift from the wind tore off a portion of this roof. It was a little difficult to see what interior damage there was, but we did see that obviously there's some roof damage. Exterior finish. This will include the wall covering system that covers the wall, sheathing, as well as insulation and weather stripping. So water resistant materials and finished materials such as stucco, siding, stone veneer, and masonry veneer. Insulation installed at the flooring beneath the lowest floor and throughout the walls and ceilings, that will be included. And then you'll see multiple types of insulation: fiberglass, blown wall and ceiling insulation, rigid insulation, things like that. And so this is just an example of one of the structures that had some of their shake tiles or shake shingles moved off of from the wind. Interior finish, this one is a little bit interesting. So interior finish includes the gypsum board, drywall, plaster, paneling, trim, and door baseboards, casing, chair rails, and ceiling moldings all make sense. Materials include the low-grade wood, plastic, composite, softwoods, and hardwoods. And then finishes include paint, stain, or varnish, and this item would also include exterior and interior painted surfaces. So when they break down this exterior painted surfaces, it is just trim work, and it's just the paint. It's not going to be the cost to repair the trim itself or the stucco or brick. It's just whatever's painted. So doors and windows, obviously it includes doors and windows, and will also include locks, hinges, frames, and handles, door handles. And there's going to be a couple assumptions made for the quality of construction. If you pick the average quality of construction, they're going to consider hollow core doors with low cost hardware. And this is for low, fair, and average construction. And then if you choose good or excellent quality, they're going to look at replacement for raised panel hardwood veneer doors, which this does not include the paint or stain. As we just said, that's going to be included in your interior finish. This is just a picture of one of the structures we saw this week. You can see that there's maybe 1.5 to 2 feet of inundation of water, and so we would consider this door to be damaged. Cabinets and countertops. The basic cabinets for bathroom, vanities, and kitchens will include the paint grade cabinets, and those will be made of fiberboard or plywood. Paint grade cabinets are the baseline because they can be painted to match the upper wall cabinets when they're repairable and to return the house to pre-disaster conditions. Damage to cabinets with hardwood base frames, doors, and drawers will require replacement based on the depth of flooding above the floor. So if the flood depth only damages the bottom cabinet and countertops, the percent damage will be 60% or less. Generally, we call it 50% unless we get countertops in there as well. And the baseline countertop is going to be laminated plastic or man-made cultured stone used for rebuilding purposes or calculation of percent damage. Floor finishes, as we talked about earlier, would be the carpet, hardwood, vinyl, ceramic tile. This is going to include subflooring and floor sheathing. Typically, all those carpeting, hardwood, flooring, vinyl tiles, and sheet vinyl are going to be replaced after water inundation. So if you see that, you're going to 100% damage that element out. Brick, stone, and clay tile most generally can be cleaned and sanitized and reused. So you would put less damage percentage on those. Plumbing, we are looking at the incoming water services, the water heater, water distribution piping, and the wastewater system. And when floodwaters saturate soils, septic systems may be unable to discharge their waste, causing a backup of the septic systems. So this kind of helps with determining level of damage or percent of damage. And also, same thing, if water raises above municipal sewer manhole covers, sewage can back up into the house as well. So keep an eye out for that, especially if you're walking through houses and things. On this structure, you can see that the water reached above the drains. It looks like the toilet was completely ripped away from maybe wave action. So I would assume that this would damage the structure or damage the plumbing maybe 50%, but this structure is a 2-story home. So then we have to consider how much did it damage the structure? Is it 50% or is it a little bit lower because there's 3 stories or 2 stories? Just something to think about. Electrical, you know, your electrical service providing circuit breaker panels and distribution wires, you got to consider all that. You're going to look at basic wiring for outlets, switches, receptacles, and lighting. And then you also look at 25 to 60 amp wiring systems for outlets for washer, dryer, stove, and refrigerators. One thing to note is that in higher quality homes, they've noticed that the minimum number of outlets and lighting fixtures increase in number and application, and this will increase the percent of damage for these elements depending on the elevation of water in the home. Also, the basic approach listed in the guidance is for slab on grade or elevated houses. And so another thing to note with this is crawl space and basement houses will have higher damage levels more quickly due to the main panel and horizontal wiring located below the lowest floor level. You do see a lot of wiring in crawl spaces and obviously a lot of HVAC and insulation there as well. So appliances, common built-in appliances. That's going to include dishwasher, hot water tank, and some stoves. The thing with these homes that are flooded, it's insane to me. When you walk down the street, you just see nothing but all the interior contents of these people's homes. And if you're trying to figure out what appliances got damaged, a lot of times you can just look on the street and get a good idea. HVAC, there's a lot of different options here to consider. The basic HVAC system is a forced air heating system. The air handler system generally is located in the thermal barrier of the house. There's boiler systems, which percent damage will be less for a boiler than it would be for HVAC because the boiler system has a sealed piping system to distribute the heat, while the furnaces used the ductwork system. Gas, oil, and fire furnaces are generally located in basements or crawl space, and so this will require replacement of the furnace assembly as soon as 12 inches of floodwaters are present. So that's good to keep in mind. And then it will require an adjustment of the percent damage to 75% as soon as the water reaches the firebox level of this heating equipment. So good to know the components of that type of heating system. And then, of course, there's the central air conditioner and heat pump, and this will have a duct air distribution system. And then the outside condenser units will require reconditioning after any flood conditions. You see a lot of this. We saw a lot of this in Ocracoke and down in Oak Island. Just something to note, old duct and HVAC insulation may contain asbestos. So if you can identify that, or if you know about that when you're out there doing the assessments, that's something to keep in mind when you're adjusting the cost for removal. All right, that gets us through residential assessments. We will go into just a couple slides on non-residential assessments because there's a small amount of difference between the two. This is a structure down in Oak Island. It had probably 1 to 2 feet of water inside the structure. But this structure was masonry foundation, so that should be helpful in their assessment. So structure types vary more when you get into the non-residential assessments. And then many of the elements that we assess in the non-residential structures are similar to those assessed for residential structures, but it envelopes several different elements from a residential into one here. And you can see we did foundation, superstructure, roof covering, plumbing, electrical, and HVAC in the residential. And then here we have just interiors. And so that'll be the difference. It does note here that some buildings in coastal areas may be better designed to resist damage from storm events. Could be based on their construction type. It also could be based on their elevation. And it could be based on when they were built, into what codes they were built to. So unlike residential structures, where we assess the floor finish, the cabinets and countertops and other interior elements separately, in non-residential structures, they're lumped into interior elements. So interiors include the partitions, interior doors, surface finishes, so walls, floors, and ceilings. Materials could include low-grade wood, plastic, composites, softwoods, and hardwoods, and then finishes could include paint, stain, and varnish. And this will also include all interior and exterior painted surfaces, but not the building or repairs of the underlying surfaces, same as in the residential assessments. This is noted under non-residential, but I really think that this works for residential and non-residential. Consider multiple stories. They will receive less damage to the elements than a single story structure, as the majority of the finishes may be distributed amongst the different floors or above the ground floor. So that concludes my presentation, and here is my email address. I also have listed my partners in crime, the Central Planner, Western Planner, and then our Community Development Planner. We all are ready and available to answer questions from anybody, and then we can address questions right now.
All right, great. We do have a few that came through. The first one, in short, anything connected to the structure in some way is included in the estimate?
I would say yes. I think, if you're talking about decks and stairs and things like that, I'm going to say yes. But, you have water lines that extend off of the structure that probably wouldn't be included because they're municipal lines or something like that. So in short, yes.
All right, next question. How does SDE work dovetail with rapid safety evaluations, such as those shown in information by the Applied Technology Council? I assume they are two completely different things.
Yes, because I don't know about that rapid evaluation. I could, if you shot me an email, answer that question, but I'd probably have to talk to somebody in one of those professions. Sorry.
All right, I'm gonna give it just a minute to see if any other questions come through. Okay, I don't see anything. Erin, any last comments?
I just appreciate you guys having me. And as always, feel free if there's any questions about development, elevation certificates, or damage assessments, please reach out to us.
And if people want to volunteer when assessments are needed, you can send me your information for those attendees that are interested. And I will keep your information on file, and Erin and I will coordinate when there's an event. Is that right, Erin?
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
We did have
appreciate it.
We do have one more question that came through. You mentioned qualified contractor. What does a contractor need to be qualified?
I would think they'd be a licensed contractor. Most of our floodplain ordinances in the local jurisdictions call for a licensed contractor, so they would be looking for that.
Okay. Sounds great. Erin, thank you so much for being with us today. Everyone that is online listening in, your PDH certificate will be emailed out this afternoon. We are also offering a new online NCBEL survey through Google Forms to hopefully make that easier for you to fill out. A hard copy will be included in the email as well. If you're interested in volunteering for these substantial damage assessments, I can get your information today as well, and we will keep it on file so that we can contact you when volunteers are needed. A quick PENC announcement. We have our ethics seminar next Wednesday and Thursday. If you're interested in attending, you can find more information on our website, penc.org. Erin, thanks again. I hope everyone has a great day.
Thank you, guys.